Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Tony Talks and Get Up and Grow, where I have conversations with inspirational leaders, influencers, and change makers, people that aren't just doing well in life, but that are also doing good in the world by giving back and contributing back to society, by sharing their gifts, sharing their tools, sharing their life's experiences. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming a very good friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, who is I guess a sister in arms, so to speak, with the Tony Robbins organization. She is a master trainer for Tony. She is an NLP practitioner. A she is a coach. She is uh, uh, also the creator, sorry, of Freedom Point Coaching. So she's the creator of that, and it is the one and only Miss Deb Battersby. Welcome, Deb. So nice to have you on.
Well, thank you, Tony. I'm excited to be here with you because you and I get to talk about things that are really passionate, that are near and dear to our hearts, and that really is all about how do we help ourselves and others become the best possible version of themselves. Kind of, and I think all of us that are on this personal development journey are aspiring to that because we absolutely know that somehow, some way, we're capable of more than what we are currently demonstrating, regardless of how spectacular that might be, because we keep on this path of growth, because we know that our potential is greater than what we are currently aware of. So,
Absolutely.
obviously, you and I have been on this path a long time, and I, I realize that not only is it about, finding out what you're capable of, what your real potential is, but it's also about becoming the best human being that you can be and finding out what, if anything, has ever prevented us from doing that and finding ways to actually pursue that intentionally and in a way that inspires us and fulfills us. So it's kind of cool to hang out with people like you, Tony.
Yeah, well, same here. Listen, what I like about this show is it started off just doing 30 people in 30 days. And then I just decided not to stop, right? And now during this situation that we're going through, it just kicked that up a notch. So I've been doing it almost every day, well, 6 days a week. Um, and I have the opportunity to showcase some of my friends and the people that have made certainly an impact in my life and are continuing to impact the world. So I do love the message that, as you know, listen, life is we're ever evolving. And I think that there's always another version of ourselves. One of the things I say all the time is the next level of your life is going to demand a different version of you, regardless of how well your life is already going. So it's about becoming. It's just about becoming, because you're never really complete. You're just becoming something new. You're just becoming better. You're getting more and more polished. You're getting more and more. You're refining. You're like port wine, getting better with age, right? And the more you learn, and
I certainly hope that's true because the aging process is something I haven't been able to stop. So
oh,
I do hope that getting better with age is all part of the game.
I
Uh,
think it is for sure. For sure.
and one of the things, it kind of goes back to, I guess many of our listeners are going to be familiar with the psychological principles of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That and the reason why that's so relevant right now is that because of the changes in the environment, because of so much uncertainty for so many people are kind of at the base of that pyramid in survival uncertainty. They're looking for some semblance of certainty about how things are going to unfold or how things are going to end up. And so when people lose that level of certainty, it threatens that survival instinct.
Mm.
And so we have a lot of people in the world who are dealing with anxiety, depression, worry, fear, stress, anxiousness, things like that. So this is a time where I believe that the change makers you refer to are going to have the opportunity to make the most impact because we know how to help people through those obstacles. And oftentimes, you know, we know, certainly from our experience, that where you're at from an emotional perspective determines a lot about what you will and will not do, what actions you take, what actions you won't take. And that part of our evolution, when we feel like, hey, that security and that certainty is pretty well established, then we're going to start to move up that pyramid. And ultimately, at the peak of that pyramid is the thing that we're all pursuing, and that is self actualization. And self actualization is really only about discovering what are you at your best? What are you actually most, what are you capable of? What are you here to do? How are you meant to serve?
Mm.
And that is always an inspiring pursuit.
Yeah, and
So,
I think that sometimes when you get to the top, what you actually find when you get there is that there really actually isn't anything there, except you get to look back and see your journey, check out your journey, see how far you've come, and that is the biggest gift and the biggest lesson of all, right?
well, I think when you get to the top, you realize that all of those innate gifts were with you the whole time.
Right. Well, you just have to find them. We come equipped
And
with everything, right? It's just tapping
exactly.
into it.
That's it exactly. And so the challenge that most of us humans have is that we put so many limitations on ourselves, usually based on someone else's opinion of us. That goes all the way back to, when we were infants and toddlers, what we, how we looked, how we behaved, like if you got the label of troublemaker at age 3 or 4 or 5, that might be something that's still a big part of your identity. And we wear a lot of labels, and with those labels come limits. And most of those limits are flat out lies, but
Mm.
they were based on someone else's perception. Oftentimes, people who actually wanted to protect us, and but in protecting us, felt like the best way to keep us safe was to actually hold us back. Kind of reminds me of, well, I think one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about liberating people and making sure people don't get held back is kind of a funny story. You see, I got held back in first grade, and I thought, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? Something's not right here. That I have to be at least as smart as the rest of the kids in the class. I don't remember not being able to follow the teacher's instructions or things like that. And I just thought, oh my gosh. So being held back, I thought, this doesn't make sense to me as a 6 year old. Didn't make sense at all. And so at that point, I think I put a label on myself. I put a label that, you know what, I have to try harder to prove that that I should pass from first grade to second grade. It's kind of weird. Well, there was one very positive upside to that label that I gave myself. And that label was all about me, first of all, proving to my teachers that I was smart enough. But I think more importantly, I had to prove to myself that I was smart enough. So by second grade, I had determined that, I was going to apply myself. I was going to learn. I was going to show them. I was going to show them that I am smart enough. I can get this. I can do this. And so that kind of started me out on an academic path that actually served me quite well in the long run. I did end up getting double promoted, and then didn't only catch up to my class, but actually passed them. Um, but it also ended up leading to academic scholarships and certain standards for myself. So that label that I kind of put on myself as not being quite smart enough forced me, well, didn't force me, but it was so uncomfortable for me that I had to choose a way to change it.
Yeah.
And what I love about that is that a lot of the patterns that we adopt actually have a beautiful upside to them. that even though it might have been negative in the moment or felt inappropriate, that it spurred the conditioning of another pattern, and that was really to apply myself academically. Now, the downside of that is that once you lock into a pattern of believing anything, as much as there's an upside to it, there's always a downside, especially a pattern like that. Because even though I had to prove to myself that I was smart enough, the reality is the subconscious will never have enough proof. It's not set up that way. It's not wired that way. Once a pattern is kind of etched into your neurology, pattern just does its job. It stays there. It does what it does. And what I've discovered in, nearly 20 years of exploring this side of human behavior is what I've discovered is that the subconscious will never release a pattern unless it's negotiated in such a way that it gets a better pattern with all the upside of the old pattern, eliminating the downside of the pattern. And quite honestly, that realization is what led me to the coaching system that I use. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that. But as I talked about the beautiful upside of that pattern of driving me academically, I found out about 20 years later that I was held back because I was sick too many days and I didn't fulfill the legal requirements for school. But I didn't know that. I just thought, oh my God, I'm stupid, or they think I'm stupid, or they think I don't get it. And I have to show them that I do. So I'm just curious, how many of you have been carrying around one of those experiences, pushing yourself, driving yourself, or holding yourself back based on something that you thought that may not have actually even been true?
That's right. Sometimes misconceptions or what you think or what you perceive or your perspective on something is completely skewed.
Oh,
That's
totally.
perfect. That's a perfect example of, and it happens so many times. As the saying goes, sometimes the most difficult journeys or difficult roads lead you to the most beautiful destinations, right?
Absolutely.
Because
And
the
the
and if you've been to that place of despair or pain or whatever, you can appreciate when you get to somewhere that where you get to the opposite of that. So many times people take for granted what they've got, all the good that they've got in life, because they've fortunately never really experienced anything too bad or too drastic, right? That's where so many that happens all the time. And even if when you've been somewhere difficult, sometimes you get complacent when you don't stop to think about how grateful you should be, or of all the great things you do have in your life.
Well, the funny thing about that is, you see, that was a painful experience for me. And God, everybody out there has had painful experiences that have caused them to doubt themselves or lose faith in themselves or not believe in themselves or to feel unwanted or unloved or undeserving. We've all had those experiences. The difference is some of those experiences drive us to overcome them. Some of those experiences hold us back in ways that debilitate us. You see, it doesn't always work in your favor. Gosh, I've worked with so many clients over the years that have felt like they do not deserve the success they have or the happiness they have or the goals that they want. And because someone important to them, decades ago said, you'll never amount to anything. You're not worth, you're not worth the ground you walk on. Or, there are things that happen to all of us that if we own that and we let it hold us back, then oddly enough, we are kind of creating our own prisons. We don't know that when we do it. We don't know that believing what other people say about us can be as debilitating as any kind of circumstantial challenge. We don't know that until we start to learn how the mind works and how the subconscious works and how, neuroscience tells us how we've reinforced these patterns over and over again. But once we kind of have an inkling that all of this is changeable, it's a whole new game.
Yeah.
It is a brand new story, and you get to rewrite it in an instant. And there's, sometimes all it takes is awareness, and with awareness comes some great epiphany that literally changes everything about how you think. And it doesn't always happen that way. One of the things that, obviously we share in common is, studying with Tony. And I remember years ago, it kind of sunk in for me. Tony said something like, when you get something, you first get it intellectually. You get the concept of it. The second level of understanding comes in a more emotional experience, right? Where you feel the impact of it. But when you really own it is when it lives in your bones, when it's etched in your neurology. And that's why athletes train. You're conditioning the body. You're training the body. That's why actors and practice their lines. That's why dancers practice. That's why everyone who's expert at anything has practiced those 10,000 hours and more, because then it becomes a physiological knowing. It's in your nervous system. It's wired to perform. Now, the thing that I discovered, and it was really profound for me, is that I thought in many of my own personal development journeys, I thought, okay, conceptually, I get it. I know what I'm doing wrong. I know where my perspective has been kind of skewed. I know what I didn't see before, and what I thought was true isn't true. So conceptually, I get it. Then I would have an emotional experience around it, understanding the impact of that. What's the upside? What's the downside? What's the pain? What's the pleasure? So that there's that emotional experience. But what occurred to me is in most of our personal development journey, what we don't often get is that third component. Because if we first have to change it conceptually, then emotionally, then the third element is we have to change it physiologically. And what most growth practices encourage is that you condition a new pattern. You condition with affirmations and incantations and meditation. You condition new thoughts, new language, new mantras around your experience. But what occurred to me is, okay, you are now conditioning a brand new strategy, but you haven't released the old strategy. It's still there. It's still in your nervous system. So now when people talk about internal conflict, it's because you've got two strong patterns running simultaneously. That one says this and one says this, and you're in conflict. And oftentimes under stress, the old pattern, because it's well conditioned, is going to prevail. And so I wanted to look in search of how do you create a coaching strategy or system that allows you to tap into all three and reverse the flow, so that you can literally release the old pattern and install a brand new pattern with no conflict, no restriction, no conditioning required. And I know that sounds like a pretty bold claim, but I've been doing it for almost 20 years, so I know it to be true.
Oh, great. Listen, at the end of it, it's like you said, when you say something to yourself, or you've heard something so many times over and over and over again, or you've had the same experience proving you right or wrong or whatever. And many times it's just the way that you choose to handle it. I saw something the other day that this goes back to what you were talking about a little while ago, a few minutes ago, is, if somebody's throwing sticks at you or throwing steel bars at you, you can choose to either build a prison, or you can choose to build a home, or build a bridge, or build whatever it is that you want. Many times people just, because of their insecurities and their own fears and everything else, they tend to build the prisons, right? So I guess
And
what you're talking about is you can just take the same material that's being thrown at you and use it to, or knock down, as they say, knock down the old prison and build a house with the material instead.
yeah, unfortunately, the challenge is most of those restrictions, those sticks and stones and bricks and bars and everything else, were thrown before you had the knowledge of how to reject information, before you had the knowledge to evaluate what was being given to you. And most of what was being given to you was given to you by people that were in a superior position. They had the power, they had the authority. You're a child. You are not even at the level of evaluative thinking yet.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so oftentimes we are carrying around these mini prisons internally that we don't even know we built. We don't even know that we allowed them to be built. We don't know.
You don't even know that you're living in the prison.
Exactly. That's the whole thing. You don't know. You moved into the damn prison and you didn't even know it.
Yeah.
You moved in and now you're decorating, so you think it's home.
And then you realize when you are in the prison, which you still don't realize, that the door is unlocked, and you stay there by choice, not because you have to.
Well, I noticed in our chat box that Betty's asking a question about how would you recommend to install a new habit or pattern. Well, first of all, I'd suggest, you have to understand what's the old pattern that's in the way. What's the pattern that you're actually running that is preventing you from getting the results you want? And here's the first thing you want to do, is you want to actually identify what's all the benefit of that old pattern. And whether you believe it or not, there is a lot of upside. Otherwise, it still wouldn't be with you. The subconscious only hangs on to what works. And because it works in serving one particular purpose, it will be with you until somehow or other there's a negotiation with the subconscious to change that. So when you start to recognize that some of those patterns are designed for comfort, protection, security, safety, certainty, that many of our protective patterns are all geared toward that first level we talked about, that need to be safe and secure. So, you can, let's say, for example, there are people who really believe they are invisible in the world, that they can walk into a room and no one notices them, that they can go through life and people pay no attention to them. And I'd be willing to bet you, and I've worked with enough of these examples in the past, that there was a time in this person's life where being invisible was exactly what they needed. They needed to be invisible to avoid the wrath of a particular individual, or the alcoholic rage of someone, or the physical or sexual abuse even of someone in proximity. That they learned a long time ago there was massive value to being invisible. And until the subconscious believes that it is safe to not be invisible, that invisible pattern is going to run the show. And this is where, this deeper level emotional shifting on the subconscious level is a tremendous asset to resolve that conflict. And does that make sense? Because honestly, I don't care what pattern you're running. I don't even, years ago, I worked with a gentleman who was actually abusing his children. And every single time that he would hit one of the children, he would berate himself. He would cry. He goes, I promised myself I wouldn't do that. I never wanted to be that kind of parent. And in, deeper exploration, we discovered that because he was a fragile child and felt very vulnerable, he learned very early to act out and attack first. And he saw his children as weak and vulnerable and wanted to make them aggressive enough to act out and protect themselves. And honestly, once we resolved that pattern of behavior on a subconscious level, then that behavior went away completely. So I have to tell you, in exploring that, I thought, how on earth can abuse be a pattern that is meant to serve? But oddly enough, on a subconscious level, the intention was for that father to teach his children how to stand up for themselves and how to become the aggressor rather than the receiver of punishment. Kind of wild.
Yeah, I don't know if yeah, I was on the other side of that, so I don't see that as that having been a possibility.
Well,
Most
but
times,
it's not for everybody. He berated himself. He didn't want to do it, and yet he didn't stop it. He couldn't stop himself.
right?
He wanted his behavior to change. Sometimes people on the other side of it, they don't want their behavior to change because it's power. It's
Yeah.
how they get control and how they get power.
Well, and usually it's usually because they're not standing up for themselves somewhere else, so they take it off on the ones that are most or that are weakest.
Vulnerable.
Yeah, normally a bully is getting his butt handed to him by, somebody at home or a
Absolutely.
boss or his wife at times. Believe it or not,
I've seen it a million,
so have I.
not a million times. But you're
His
absolutely
muscles had
right.
muscles. Yeah, his muscles had muscles, and he was getting abused by his wife.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it's
And
amazing why it's crazy, but yeah,
well, and oftentimes, the interesting thing about anger and aggression, and it's not just about being a bully, that anger and aggression, when you are actively angry and aggressive, it's absolutely tied to the fact that you're angry with yourself because you didn't stand up for yourself. You didn't take the actions you knew. You didn't speak the truth when you knew it was the right thing to do. So, but please do understand, my firm belief is there is no such thing as a negative emotion. I believe that all emotion comes to serve. All emotion is intelligent. All emotion is designed for guidance. The fact that we judge it and repress it and deny it and
true.
try to disconnect from it is why we make ourselves wrong for feeling it. And by the way, the more we repress it, we all have threshold. When you repress something for too long, there is always that straw that breaks the camel's back.
Yeah, and then one thing leads to another. One of the things I tell people is that there is no bad emotion, right? There's the negative emotions and positive emotions, and you want to be able to feel those negative emotions and then move on from them and
Yeah.
stay in the good and happy emotions. But we were talking before about I'm not on the flight path, and I said, well, just small airplanes. And what I tell people is our emotions are all they are indicators, right? Imagine yourself
Absolutely.
in the cockpit. Yeah, you're the
It's guidance. It's
cockpit.
telling you,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're in the cockpit, and every gauge means something, and some are more important than others. Hey, you're out of fuel, or hey, the horizon's that way, or engine number one is out, or whatever it is. Those are the really big ones. Those are anger. Those are excitement. But then there's all the smaller ones that,
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
no big deal. There's a little bit of frost on the wing, or there's no big deal. There's a little bit of a hydraulic fluid leak over here, and it's no big deal. But if you ignore those long enough, they become a big deal. So all
It's
the
true.
gauges in the
You
cockpit,
crash and burn. That's it,
all the gauges in the cockpit are important. You just got to know that some are more important than others or require more attention. But you need to know what all of those do, and you need to be able to know how to adjust them for sure.
Well, the beautiful thing about it is that, the way I see it is that we have an emotional communication system. It's a guidance system. You're absolutely right. There's a lot of gauges and a lot of information. Now, we know that the conscious mind can process about 42 bits of information per second, where the unconscious or the subconscious can process in the millions, 42 versus millions. And I would give you the exact amount, but I don't remember if it's 2 million or 4 million. But so
Oh,
it's millions. It's a lot. It's
a
a
lot.
lot. And the reality is your nervous system is able to process all this information. You know, you talk about you walk into a room and you could cut the tension with a knife. You know, that is energy around you. And your nervous system is processing every single bit of information that's going on around you all the time. The way you know if that information is meant to be a good experience or a not good experience is through your emotional response to this sensory input.
Hmm.
Now, the way I see it is, and you know what? I don't even believe in negative emotion and positive. I believe there are things that feel good and things that don't feel good. They are still guidance. And the things that feel good, this is what we want to move toward. Things that feel bad, we want to make sure we move away from it. If there's danger, if there's threat, if there's harm, if there's real concern, then we are going to develop any kind of protective mechanism we can to put ourselves in a safe space. Now, the great thing about this is every single one of us actually has pretty much the same neurological system. We have the same nervous system. We have the same skeletal system. They may not be all the same size and shape, but we all have the same number of bones in the body. We are formulated as human beings almost identically. I think I read something not long ago that only 2 to 3% of our DNA is actually different, and that 2 to 3% makes us infinitely unique. But for the most part, we're the same structure. We're the same system. To me, the emotional system is the most sophisticated communication system on the planet. And it speaks to us in a universal language. All human beings feel the same emotions. And so this universal language is our guidance. If it doesn't feel good, if something feels dangerous or threatening, the signal is to, whoa, step back for a moment and examine the situation.
Hmm.
But I think we know there's at least 4,000 human emotions that we're aware of. And oftentimes we make the mistake of putting all of our um, uncomfortable emotions in one bucket. We call them stress, or we put them all in one bucket and we call them fear. And they are not one and the same. Each of them are individualized communication structures. And so, Betty, one of the things that would also help is to get really clear on what it is you're really feeling. It's, rather than fear, just go, okay, what fear? What exact fear am I referencing here? What am I really feeling? Am I fearful or am I a little anxious? Am I a little anxious or do I have some trepidation? Do I have some trepidation or do I have some concern? Because each of those is a different physiological, neurological, and chemical experience. And the way we label our emotions will either heighten or lessen the emotional intensity of our experience.
Hmm. I agree with that. I agree with that. So certainly. So what's the shortcut, so to speak, or what's like one of the tips that you can share, that because so many people, the challenge, I guess, let me back into that question. Challenge is that most people are disconnected from their emotions and they don't even know what they feel. Like you said, anger. Well, they're probably not angry. They're probably just, annoyed, or
Yeah.
they're frustrated, and everything just, it's like you said, there's so many different emotions. I didn't know there were 4,000. I knew there were a lot more than what most people use, but most people use like joy, excitement, fear, pain,
Yeah.
anger. They you can probably count them on two, maybe three hands, is the common emotions that most people use,
Yeah.
right? Or that they even recognize.
Well, that they label, and
That
that's
they label. Right.
And each of those probably has a nuance of, probably a dozen or more emotions within them. Um, I know there are more thousand words for emotion in the English language, and that doesn't include the emotion that goes with grunts and sounds and facial expressions, because
Right.
those all have emotions too. So we probably have thousands upon thousands of ways to express emotion. If you ever watch a gorilla, oh my God, the emotional expression and intensity in those creatures is fascinating.
Mm.
It's all in a tone. There's no real verbal language that we're aware of. But if you watch the expression, the tonality, the intensity, every single one of those things is communicating an emotion. So it's quite fascinating. So
So
the first thing about being disconnected from your emotions, most of us are disconnected because we're scared to death that if we connect with our emotions that we're going to implode, that there's something about what we feel that we can't face. And that is the reality. We're afraid of being vulnerable. We're afraid that emotion makes us vulnerable.
we
When
think that we're wrong, right? We think that feeling that emotion, I shouldn't be feeling that way. I
exactly.
shouldn't be. I can't believe I'm feeling this, or I shouldn't feel this, or you shouldn't feel that way. How many times have we heard you shouldn't feel that way? It's not what I meant. You shouldn't feel that way. Well, listen, I feel this.
Or that's not right, or that's stupid, or
Right.
why do you
So
feel that way? What are you, some kind of wuss? You
right.
know. So
Just emotions. You're feeling them, whether you should be feeling them or not.
exactly. But see, here's the fundamentals of my whole coaching premise is number one, all emotions come to serve. There is no such thing as a negative emotion. All emotions are intended for your highest good, whether you know it or not. And that is a fact. It's an absolute fact. And I've only done thousands of coaching sessions to back it up, that every single emotion is for your highest good, bar none. Second thing is, because we have been told that certain emotions aren't appropriate or accurate or or manly or womanly or whatever it is, that because the emotions don't fit into the right category, that we call those emotions bad, or other people judge them as bad. And guess what? We go, okay, those emotions are bad. I can't stop feeling those emotions. I feel them and I don't want to. I try my damnedest not to feel these things, but I feel them. So here's the deal. Those emotions are bad. I know that I should control them. I can't control them. Ah, I must be bad. You see,
Hmm.
you take that leap from the emotion is bad to
What's wrong?
I'm bad because I can't control that. And quite frankly, that is the beginning of most emotional distress. It is the beginning of all of the things that we call emotional disorders, that we judge them because they're not appropriate, when in fact they are absolutely appropriate for whatever you're dealing with in the moment, and that the solution is to bring those emotions forward and to certainly, dialogue with a coach, dialogue with a therapist, journal, always journal. And here's one thing that I can offer you, that you can do for yourself. And I do this for myself periodically. When I'm feeling something that I don't understand, I immediately will check in with that emotion. And by the way, you check in your body because it's always in your body. You feel it somewhere in your body. You check in with that emotion and you ask this question: why are you here? Not why am I here? I am talking directly to that emotion. Why are you here? What is it that you want from me? And I'll tell you what, write down whatever comes to you. Ask that question enough times and you will eventually come to the answer that either gives you goosebumps, brings tears to your eyes, gives you a shiver. You've hit on the construct of that emotion, that you're really in touch with it. And so you say, okay, if that's why you're here, what do you want me to do? Why are you here? What do you want me to do? And then do it. That's how you resolve that emotion in the moment. Most of us are restricted in what we are willing to do, not willing to do, how much success we can have, how much abundance we can have, how able we are to serve others based on limitations that were installed a long damn time ago. The opportunity to explore that and rewrite your future based on a new truth of what you're really capable of is where the freedom to actualize, the freedom to be the best version of yourself. And so honestly, that's why I decided to call my coaching system Freedom Point. Because
aside from just because I always say that, emotions are there to show you something, to bring your attention to something. But asking, why are you here? That's a good one.
that
That's powerful. Why are you here?
Why are you here? And I'll tell you, I'll give you an example. Years and years and years ago, and by the way, almost every physiological pain you have is attached to an emotional construct. That's my experience as well, in terms of, coaching, literally thousands of coaching sessions over the last 20 years. Now, I can give you an example of my own personal experience when and it does, by the way, you really have to be patient when you ask this question and journal, because it's not until you reveal, you get past the superficial answers that the Now, my own example was, this was a number of years ago. Oddly enough, I was at a Tony Robbins event. I was in Scotland, as a matter of fact, at a life wealth mastery, I think.
I was there.
Isn't that fun? And
except for the rain and the poles moving in the wind while we're trying
and the cold and the dampness and all that. Yeah. It was awesome. Anyway, so I'm crawling into bed, and it was probably like 4 o'clock in the morning as usual, something crazy like that. And I was feeling this low back pain, and I'd been feeling it for days. And just as you kind of get into the twilight space, because what in my experience in resolving these emotional patterns is I always take people into what I call an induction trance. Very, very light. It's kind of like being half awake, half asleep, but very aware of what's going on. So I slip into bed, and I'm very aware of this pain. And I just go, okay, why are you here? Why are you here? And the first answer somehow or other didn't seem to stick or catch. There was no emotional response to it. But then came the answer. I am the feeling of being unsupported. And tears started streaming down my face. And I thought, whoa. And my first reaction was, this is such BS. That's not true for me. I'm totally supported. I have a, incredibly supportive husband. I have a supportive family. I'm supported. And the answer then came was, you don't support yourself in the way you need to. Mm-hmm. And then I said, so why did you come? And it said, I came to give you backbone. Because I need you to be strong enough to not only stand up for yourself, but you need to be able to stand up for others. And all of a sudden, everything about what I had done for the previous, since I was probably 9 years old, made sense. That I was developing backbone to stand up to bullies, to stand up to abuse, to speak out against injustice and unfairness. And by the way, after that self-discovery conversation with myself and my lower back pain, I have never felt that pain again, ever.
Crazy, right? How we hold so much emotion.
Yes, but I'll tell you what, the most beautiful thing about that emotional conversation was it said, I came to give you backbone. You need to be strong enough to stand up for others. And consciously, if you had ever given me that choice, do you think I would have known that? Do you think I could have figured that out? Do you think that the feeling of unsupported was that I would have chosen that to build my character strength?
Well, as you climb up that pyramid, things start to make sense.
Yeah.
The closer you get to the top, the more you can look back and say, "Oh, I can connect that dot to that dot. Oh, I can connect that dot to that dot." But you've got to get
Well,
far enough
but
away.
but part of that is for you to see, and I'm sharing this story for you to see the brilliance of the pattern. Your subconscious, my subconscious created that for me. I didn't say, "Oh, by the way, help me feel unsupported so I could pluck up some courage."
Yeah.
I didn't consciously think that, never even occurred to me. I didn't even know that that this little shift was underway. I had no idea.
Sometimes, in order to be, sometimes you've got to break in order to be healed.
Well, I guess the whole
Break.
thing,
I don't, because
I
I don't
guess
use
what
the word
I'm trying to say
broken.
is it's not broken.
Yeah, I
It's
don't like to use the word broken. None of us are broken. We're all a little cracked,
more.
but
No, I guess, my belief is that the system is flawless. It's brilliant. It has wisdom beyond your ability to fathom and contemplate. And, I can say this with such passion and conviction because I have seen it over and over and over again. I don't care what pattern I take into the subconscious. I don't care what challenge the client comes with, that there is a pathway into that pattern that will reveal its brilliance and its intention and a way to upgrade it to higher level service while eliminating all the downside. This is what I do every day. And nothing in the world to me is more brilliant or more beautiful or more powerful because it's your own genius. It is the genius of how we were created. The only problem is no one gave us a manual on the emotional system. So we have misinterpreted and misused it our entire lives.
yeah. Well, listen, all we can hope for is that, we can continue to climb and we continue to learn and grow, and having people like you and like me and like so many other people to help try to not enlighten, I shouldn't say enlighten, but I guess in a way enlighten. But again, just keep learning. I tell people all the time, just keep learning, keep growing, because wherever you're at now, you know, as that line goes, your current situation is not your final destination, but you got to keep growing through what you go through. Hence the name of the show, right? You have to
Mhm.
get up and grow. Most people just get up and go, but until you start to pick up those nuances and figure out what those things mean, why did I go through that pain? Look at it through a different perspective and understand that life is indeed happening for you, and there's a higher purpose to whatever's going on. And hopefully you find out what that purpose is, because many people don't get to find out what that higher purpose is of their calling or that pain or whatever they're going through. They don't get to do that. So I think it's up to us to try to, again, as they say, don't complain about the cards you were dealt. Play the hell out of the hand you got, right? Figure
Well,
it out.
and the reality is that we were all given a hand that is far more sophisticated and genius than we know.
Right.
And I think the most important thing for me is, when I discovered this work and this system, it's a synthesis of everything I've ever learned, I'm sure of it. But in the discovery of it, I realized that what's flawed is our paradigm around emotion. We think that certain emotions are negative. We think they're inappropriate. We think they're unacceptable. So because of that, we deny, repress, suppress, disassociate. We do all of those things. And so what we do by that pattern is we actually disconnect from the genius of the system.
Hmm.
We're not plugged into it because we're turning it off as much as possible.
It's just feedback, right? There is, as the saying goes, there's no bad feedback. It's just feedback. Here's a little light going off because this is what's happening. It's connected to that incident. It's connected to that thought. It's connected to that
And
whatever it is, and you've got to pay attention to it. That's why you feel the feeling, right? You
exactly. And
act on
so
it, hopefully
so
grow.
if we could just dispel the myth that there is such a thing as negative emotion or bad emotion or inappropriate emotion, if we could dispel that myth and let people know that they are endowed with a sophisticated guidance system that speaks to you through emotion. And there's a way to communicate with it. And, and honestly, with, working with someone who knows how to tap into the subconscious and reorganize the system, you can clear out decades of patterns in one conversation.
That's
And
amazing. That's amazing. So with that, tell us, what is it that you're working on? What are you excited about?
thank you. I have been teaching this work kind of intermittently over the last 10 years. And it's always been in, 3-day workshops and things like that, so that I can make sure that people are following the system and getting the results so that they can actually use this strategy to transform people's lives or help people transform their lives. So, because of, I've always had the dream to put this into an online training program. And the COVID quarantine has prompted me to finish that project. And so on Friday, I'm actually launching the Freedom Point coaching certification. And it's something I'm super excited about, being able to help other coaches, therapists, counselors, healers, help the people that are out there committed to guiding people through this challenging time, to helping people get to their place of strength and resourcefulness quickly. I want to reach as many of those people as I can, because I learned a long time ago that the only reason to coach is for leverage. To coach one person who can coach many others is the only way I can get to as many people as possible. That in order to serve as much of humanity as I feel like I'm compelled to do, then I need to help other people learn this system so that they can literally produce transformation in every conversation. That is the goal. So it's an 8-week program. It's got a lot of really cool stuff in it. It's six of the modules are online. The other modules are a Q&A plus practice sessions. There's lots of cool bonuses with it as well. And for now, if anyone who's listening to this is interested, they could just go to freedompointcoaching.com and
Visit freedompointcoaching.com.
freedompointcoaching.com. Yeah. And so if anyone would like more details, and I don't want to take up a lot of time online here, but if anyone would like more details, just email me, deb@successmatrix.com. deb@successmatrix.com. Email me, and I'd be happy to schedule a private call with you to walk you through anything you have. But I also want to share, Tony, that this is going to launch on Friday, and I'm really excited about all the people that have already said yes to this journey, and I'd like to help as many people as I can. So if you decide you want to check it out, and you go to the freedompointcoaching.com and you click on sign me up, when you get to the payment page, if you type in the coupon code trainer, you will get right now it's being offered at 50% off. Because
Trainer, got all caps?
Trainer, all caps. If you enter the word trainer, then you will get an additional 25% off the program. So it's a crazy good deal. And
Fantastic.
yeah, so if it serves anybody on the call, or they want to talk to me personally, please do.
Awesome. So, and you said it's going live on Friday.
On Friday, yeah.
That's exciting.
It is exciting. It's very exciting. And I'm so thrilled about it, because I don't think there's been a time in our lives where this information is more valuable and more important. nor do I understand, do I believe that this is a time where coaches and therapists and counselors can have such a massive impact.
Oh, listen, without a doubt, one of the things that I've been saying to so many of our fellow trainers and other strategists and coaches out there, this is kind of what we've been training for, right? This is what we're practicing for. There's people that are going to be in need of support in dealing with their emotions. And again, there's so many people that lack. So don't want to say that in a way that's offensive. So it's not to be said offensively, but one of the epidemics that we have in this country and in the world, but specifically in this country, because I had a friend on here a couple weeks ago, Scarlett Lewis, which is one of the Sandy Hook moms from Newtown, Connecticut, and she talks about she's got a program where she teaches emotional intelligence to children. And that's one of the things that and the reason that the children don't have is because the adults don't have it. The parents didn't teach them that, and it's taught in school. So when we're talking about what you're talking about, really is also emotional intelligence and getting down to
it is the ultimate in emotional intelligence, but it transcends it to the point that when you can realize that every emotion is intelligent, you are light years ahead of the rest of the world.
Right. But being able to understand it and being able to manage and control your emotions, but being able to go and understand and ask, why are you here, and break it down to the nitty gritty of why it is that you're feeling the emotion, and understanding that all it is, maybe it's just a tiny little light, or it's just a little twinge of pain. But the reality of it is, if we didn't have pain and we didn't have emotions, we'd put our hand on the stove and not realize it's on fire. And then you got to cut your hand off so that, you don't die of that little thing, right? So
exactly.
Yeah, I'm down with that.
I apologize for interrupting you, but your guest, has been involved, in the parents of the school shooting and things like that.
Yeah.
Would you do me a favor and offer my program to her for free?
Oh, without a doubt. And she's such an amazing. My God, if you haven't watched it, Deb, I'll tag you on the show that I did with her.
Yeah.
Oh, you got chills just thinking about it. Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And I would love for her to have even an additional resource. But if she's interested, I would just reach out to me and I'll give you details on how to get it for free.
Oddly enough, I told her, because her story impacted me so much. I said, I'm going to take it on as like a side job to promote her and what she does, because she's doing it for children, like free program for children in schools. And she's having a hard time putting them into schools because there's not enough money for the powers that be to prompt. No money. Do it for free.
She's going to love. There are 2 super educators that are going to be in this course.
Well, listen, I think that you guys need to kind of team up, and so I vowed that I'm going to help put her together with as many people as possible. So this is actually great that we did this today, because I'm going to put you 2 together.
Fantastic, and I know that they're one of the people that's going to be on in participating in this particular curriculum runs a nonprofit for children in Germany. Another person is very heavily involved in creating school curriculum in Canada. So I think it would be a good opportunity for her to connect with some people, and I would be honored to share.
Yeah, listen, I'll connect you guys right after this call. I've got no problem with that whatsoever. So
it's not mandatory. It just seems like that seems like a right thing to do.
I agree. Listen, I'm very much, I go on emotion. I'm emotion driven, and well, not emotion. I put it this way: I follow my gut instinct a lot, because for a long time I did.
Gut instinct is emotion.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. Oh, without a doubt. But I said it because some people are like, well, you lead by emotion. No, I lead by what I feel, and for so long I ignored the signs that were coming in. And it affected me in very negative ways, and it's cost me a lot over the years. So I listen, I pay attention. If something, so much so that if when I'm with a client, I'm coaching a client or in a strategy session, if something comes up to my mind, I say it. I say it because if it came to me, this because it needed to get to them, or if I felt something. So I'm very much, I'm much more in tune now than I've ever been in my life. And I hope to with every step of that pyramid that I take, that I'm learning more. And, I do that by, having friends like you, and learning from so many different people. So
Likewise.
I appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you for the opportunity, Tony. It's been a pleasure.
No, it's great to have you on here. So everyone, please check out Deb. Go to freedompointcoaching.com. If you decide to move forward with the program, I have no doubt that it's going to be spectacular. The coupon code trainer, 25% off. You can also
25 extra percent off. So
25 extra percent off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even better. 25 extra percent off.
Yeah.
So I don't even know how much off it was originally. So whatever it is, I'm sure it's a deal.
I've been offering it because of the COVID environment, at a 50% off. But so if you put in that coupon code, you'll save even more.
Wow, fantastic. Well, thank you, Deb, for coming on, for sharing yourself, for sharing your knowledge, for making a difference, and for how you show up in the world, because you, my friend, are a game changer. You are a world changer, and you're contributing back in ways that we should all contribute back. So thank you for how you show up in the world. Thank you for being on here, and don't go away. Any final words before?
I just want to say, be kind to yourself. That whatever those feelings are, please do not judge them. Yeah. Explore them. They are a gift to you. They are meant to be a gift to you. They are not a flaw, not in any way, shape, or form. And I really just want to dispel that entire myth around, judging our emotions as unacceptable and inappropriate, because it doesn't serve us to do that. It causes us to deny the genius with which we were created.
Yeah.
So embrace it, love it, and let's change the world.
Absolutely beautiful. And remember, if you do think you're cracked, it's okay. I think we're all a little cracked anyway, and it's okay, because that's not, people say, oh, that's where the light goes in. I think it's opposite. I think that's where how your light comes out.
So, well, it's kind of funny that you say that. I teasingly tell people that two of my highest values are defiance and irreverence, because I want to challenge everything.
Maybe that's why we get along.
Because to me, nothing is sacred. Everything should be challenged, and only own what's true for you. That's it.
That's it. Love it. So listen, my friends, thank you very much again for coming, for supporting us, for tagging, for contributing, for making your comments, asking your questions, and certainly for tagging and sharing this video with your friends. Remember that we are streaming on Facebook and on YouTube. Again, follow Deb on Instagram at Deb_Battersby. You can follow me at Tony Rodriguez 2.0. And thank you for coming. Thank you for your support. And remember, my friends, that life is not about how many times you fall. It's about getting up after every fall, and knowing that it's in falling down that you learn. It's in getting up that you grow. And every single time you fall, you have the opportunity to get up and grow we must. Appreciate you, my friends. Thank you for coming, and I will see you tomorrow.